Tommy Durfler, Sam Rice here, back on the Lighthouse Wealth Group Spotlight Podcast. Sam and I were talking about this whole concept of being rich versus being wealthy. So,
Yeah.
Sam, when you think about being rich, what do you think about?
I think about high income, probably a lavish lifestyle, living big, things of that nature. What about you?
I
Yeah.
think of like sports figures, entertainers. I think of high profile jobs, whether surgeon, doctor, an attorney,
hmm
something like that, somebody that brings in, a lot of income. And so, yeah, something that's just, income based more than anything than asset based.
Focused on just bringing in those dollars each day rather than potentially trying to save up enough to live primarily off your investments. I think a lot of people considered rich, or we would consider rich, are often in that lifestyle. And I think that's maybe one of the biggest differentiators between what you'd say wealthy and immediately or new money rich. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. So if we switch gears here and say, okay, well, what does that compare to? When you think about being wealthy, typically what I think is more asset based, right? How much stuff do you have? Is your stuff growing? And
Yep,
so in that one, it's not about high income, it's about more of the assets. And
that's
so
right.
being wealthy is having more investments, whatever those might be, but it's continuously growing those things that you own long term, you know?
Focusing on your assets, not so much spending and creating your liabilities bigger. I think that's one of the
Yeah.
biggest differentiators or one of the big things that people can fall on as their income grows is just that lifestyle creep that people can creep
Mm-hmm.
into. And I think that's when you think of somebody who's rich versus wealthy, wealthy might be in my mind somebody who's very under the radar, someone very
Yeah.
unassuming that isn't caught up in those lavish things or looking
Big
rich.
cars,
That's
houses,
right.
multiple things. I like how you said that. You said you could fly under the radar being wealthy, right? It's like the millionaire next door
hmm
who doesn't have a high
That's right.
income, but has been done exceptionally well at saving their money. And all of a sudden might not be rich, but they're wealthy, because of how much they've saved and
Uh-huh.
grown along the way. Warren Buffett has this quote and it says, if you want to get rich, be an entrepreneur. But if you want to be wealthy, be an investor.
That's great. People focus so much on the things, maybe like, oh my gosh, I've got this income now on now I can afford all these things, where, protecting what you've gotten, saving it, growing it, making sure you're spending less than you're making, I think is that wealth concept that a lot of people that are either new to making high incomes or something of that nature kind of fall short on in a lot of times. And I think that's one of the big part of educations that we do with the clients is help them realign their focus with growing their assets rather than liabilities on a balance sheet, whether that's a bigger mortgage, bigger car payments, just because they can afford the immediate cash flow, right? Are those things really benefiting you and your life and your family's life and what you're trying to build for in the future?
So then the question then remains, can you be rich and wealthy, or could
Yeah.
you be wealthy and not rich, or could you be rich and not wealthy?
Do you think you can be wealthy and not rich? I think you
Yes.
can. I mean, and it's all respectively, right? Like everyone's situation is so different, but I think in a lot of cases we find in our clients' lives they are wealthy people because they've in their respective lifestyle because they've done such a good job focusing on their spending, focusing on their saving, and really being able to build that wealth for themselves as opposed to just spending everything that they make, where, that would be kind of your rich lifestyle, right?
And on the other end of the spectrum, you could be rich and not wealthy. So to your point, you could have a great
Yeah.
income, spending everything. Yeah, you're rich, but you're not saving, and growing your assets. And so you could, be
hmm
rich and not wealthy at the same time. Or you
Yeah.
could be rich and wealthy.
You can have both. Yeah, you can be a great earner and a great saver. That's the pinnacle, right?
Hmm.
Where you haven't just maximized your lifestyle. You're still keeping things within reason. I think the best way to do it is, as your income grows, you're keeping everything in respective percentages of your income,
Hmm.
right? If
Hmm.
your mortgage is 25% of your income, well, maybe it only makes sense if you do want to get a bigger house or what have you, as long as that new income is respective and the new house is respective of still keeping it within that 25% of the income. I think that's still safe to say you can do both.
So, have you met somebody who is rich and wealthy? I mean, let's talk about
Yeah,
that psychology
fantastic
for a
earners and
moment.
fantastic savers. Huh?
Yeah, and yeah, let's talk about that psychology for a moment because if you think about it, somebody has a high income and a lot of assets, you've got to have a certain view of money that most don't have, right? Because you can have one or the
Yeah.
other and just want to spend and still be okay. But, for the person who's both rich and wealthy, I don't even think money really comes into play for them. Money is not something they value. It could be time, it could be philanthropy, it could be
Yeah.
family, it could be, being a part of the community. And it's just like the afterthought is, oh, okay, now what to do with this money?
What are these avenues that I can use my money to better enrich my life? Whether it's
Yeah.
philanthropy, how is this really making me happy? And is
Hmm.
this fulfilling my wishes? Whether that's giving back, saving for my kids, saving for my retirement, what have you, checking all those boxes.
Because I think the thing I wouldn't want personally would be because if you're rich, people kind of know it to some degree. It's harder to fly under the radar when you're rich and wealthy because, if you think of, celebrities, right, or
Hmm.
entertainers, they're showered with attention. And so they
Yeah.
can't, you can't be somebody, you can't be Brad Pitt and say, oh, no, I don't have that much, no, it's okay. You can't be that humble when people are like, no, I think you make a lot of money. You can't be like that.
I know how much they paid you
But
for that
that,
movie.
yeah, exactly. But I think it would be hard, to really fly under the radar in that situation. And so it's just, that would be difficult psychologically is just to both be rich and wealthy.
Well, and I think it makes it even harder in today's age with everything is just a fingertip, a click away from buying.
Oh, yeah.
They make it so easy, whether it's Amazon, what have you, online shopping, to just spend. It's so easy and it shows up at your house, in 2 days or a day. And
I love it. It's kind of like Jeff Bezos has this one click to take money from your checking account, put it in his.
that's right.
Just
When I
one click,
think,
folks.
I know, it's just so easy. And you see all these things online with, oh, my wife, another cardboard box from Amazon showing up at the doorstep every day. It's just so
Hmm.
easy these days. But I think going back to what you were saying, being rich and wealthy, I think one of the interesting things that I heard a long time ago is that a lot of wealthy people seem cheap. But,
Hmm.
on the flip side of it, they're just trying to protect what they've earned. I think being very knowledgeable about your expenses and being purposeful and intentional with what you choose to spend your money on makes those rich people in the long run wealthy because they've made smart decisions with those money. Even, if they're making high income, not rich people become wealthy in the same regard just because they're very intentional with their money.
Because really, not everybody could be rich as far as income goes, but everybody has an opportunity to become wealthy. And that's
Yeah.
that's the great thing about being intentional with that is you can start with nothing and in your lifetime multimillionaire where you don't have to have the high paying job or something like that to be able to become wealthy, but it's harder to become rich in our definitions than it is to become wealthy.
No, I think the first step in that, and it's kind of like the delayed gratification, is paying yourself first for something
Hmm.
down the road that's so hard for a lot of people, right? You get
Hmm.
your paycheck or whatever money in the door, and it's like, oh, well, that thing I've been waiting for, I can finally get, or what have you, where a lot of people forget that step to pay themselves first and
Yeah.
continue to either save and invest because that's every week or two that you may miss getting a paycheck or what have you. That's time you don't have in the market
Ah,
that you can never get back. The one beautiful compounding effect that investing really has is that eighth
yeah.
wonder of the world, right? Compound interest.
Well, it's almost like building up an income for yourself, because
That's
if your
right.
money's making money, that's income that you're paying, and it just kind of snowballs. And that's what I love about watching people's, wealth continue to build is because, we've been in this business long enough that it's like 5, 7, 10, 15 years goes by. And you're like, man, I remember when they had, a third of this
Yeah.
or a quarter of this, and just
Yep.
to see how well that works and see kind of the position that they were able to get to is just by being disciplined and intentional, just like you said, which is, the joy of our jobs.
Yeah. It's like, hey, I only put in a little bit every month. And man, like you said, 15 years down the road, you look at your initial investments and you're like, oh my gosh, this may be up another two or three times what was
Mm-hmm.
originally in there. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a beautiful thing to see.
So it's just funny how, you can see different people and how they spend their money. And not that any of this is judgmental, of course, but just from an observational standpoint, to be able to see people, really build wealth and not have a substantial income. And on the flip side, it's kind of sad to see people with substantial income not save enough, because there's some really good people out there, some really talented people that get compensated very well for what they do. If you don't see them saving enough or putting enough back, it's like, oh man, it kind of breaks your heart almost a little bit, just because you see the potential in that and you want them
Yeah.
to succeed.
Yeah. I think we see that a lot. I know we were speaking about it before, but with athletes, right? Making so much. And I think I just saw this thing the other day where they're now having, I think it was either the rookie classes or in the NFL or the draft classes where they're talking about, hey, you might get your first contract and you might want to start paying people and thanking them for all the hard work that they've put into you. But don't forget, Uncle Sam's going to take 30 to 45 or 50% of that at the end of the day, and you're getting cut just a fresh 1099 check that you don't have taxes saved for, or saving for retirement, or if you get injured this next year. So that's I think a crucial thing that I think a lot of high earners didn't get a taste of enough in the past is just the importance of protecting that income that comes in the door. Because I mean, there's so many levels of wealth and income, and there's a plethora of things that you can spend money on out there. It's very easy to walk
Hmm.
out the door. It's hard to get it.
Yeah, that's right, man. It's easier, much easier to spend than accumulate 100% on that one. But this whole topic of rich versus wealthy, I hear my nephews, my nieces and nephews, and they'll be like, "Oh, I just want to be rich." And, this is a 12-year-old talking, right? And you're kind of like, no,
Yeah.
you want to be wealthy. you know, if you're gonna have
Change
either,
that
choose to be
mindset.
wealthy. Yeah, choose to be wealthy. But in a 12-year-old's mind, or young adolescent mind, they don't know that. They just want here and
Hmm.
now. So I always kind of laugh when family members of mine that are much younger, and they're just like, "Oh yeah, I want to be rich, Uncle Tommy. I want to be rich," and you're just kind of like, "All right, let's sit down and have a conversation."
Well, how are you going to do that? That's the first step. I think the cool part of that too is I think we spoke about this on our last podcast about generational wealth is if you can start kids early understanding these concepts and just like the compound interest thing we were just talking about, seeing that money grow for you, I think that
Hmm.
gets that mindset much more solidified at an early age where it gets really interesting. You haven't done anything, but yet your account may be up 30% for the year just
Hmm.
because you've been diligent.
Absolutely.